Welcome to the Clear Down Show. I'm your host, Dr. G, with a PhD. Before we get started, remember guys, tell your friends about this show, and please like and subscribe on this episode. It really helps with the YouTube algorithms. If you like the thumbnail art, you can check it out on a much higher resolution on Instagram. And remember, leave any questions you might have throughout the week. And on the last episode of the week, I will be answering the questions in a mailbag. All right. Hey, welcome everybody. So we've got a packed show for you guys today. We're going to start off with all things Canada and how they are no longer in the Emergency Act. So that was a crazy last 48 hours. We'll break it all down. From there, we're going to go to England. England's done with COVID. The CDC is still pushing out commercials on pregnant women getting the vaccine, but the CDC is also releasing letters on COVID vaccination and syphilis. What's that about? We'll break that down. We'll talk about Leanna Wen and how she's talking about more of the science, the one that we predicted 3 or 4 months ago, and they said we were crazy, and now they're saying it, so that's always fun. Finally, we're going to break down this Ivermectin study that came out in JAMA, why everyone's talking about it, what it says, and where you can go to get information on Ivermectin and COVID. So let's dive on in. Before we get started with the news today, I want to say thank you to all of you for subscribing. We reached 30 subscribers, which is a huge number for me. Where you started with nothing. We started with 1, 2 subscribers. Now we're at 30, and I hope we only go up from here, So thank you guys so much for subscribing and, enjoying the content and sharing it with your friends and hopefully opening up doors for reasonable discussion. I want to continue doing that, and I can't wait to keep providing you guys more and more content. So now let's do a little touch up on Canada. And again, Canada COVID policy is just a level 5 disaster zone. It is awful. They've done so many things backwards. Even in the last 24 to 48 hours, it's been a wild ride. So let's get into it. So first off, we're going to start with Yara Sachs, who is a Canadian member of parliament, and she has some interesting thoughts on Honk Honk.
How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of Honk Honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media?
Now, this is just incredible. So first of all, that's not an acronym. So here's the dictionary definition of an acronym. It's an abbreviation formed from the letters of other words and pronounced as a word, like NASA. NASA is an acronym because it stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Honk instead is usually an onomatopoeia. And onomatopoeias are words that mimic the sounds or noises that they refer to. So for example, cows go moo, trucks go honk. So honk honk is an onomatopoeia. All right, the second point is not everybody is Hitler. Okay, not everybody's a Nazi. This is such a common thing, and I don't really know why it is. Maybe people just like to go to the worst possible extremes. Maybe it is the fact that they only know about one bad guy in history, and that's Hitler. But this sense that all the guys that are honking are Nazis is just the worst. It is all they're trying to do is rile people up against a cause. It's weak stuff, and if there is parliament timeout, this lady needs to be there for a little bit so she can think about what she said. But of course, that wasn't even the worst of it. Trudeau has gone through a somersault, twister, 5-point turn maneuver to get from one side of the issue to the other side of the issue in just 48 hours. Let's start with him 48 hours ago.
Communauté et leur liberté. I can't imagine that anyone who votes no tonight is doing anything other than indicating that they don't trust the government to make incredibly momentous and important decisions at a very difficult time. But like I said, I am confident that the majority of parliamentarians will stand up to support our values, to stand up to support our democracy, and to stand up to support their fellow Canadians.
So the first thing I noticed in that video is that there was 2 signers. Maybe somebody can comment in the comment section and answer this, but is that because there's 2 different languages? Are they signing for 2 different languages? I guess one maybe in Canadian French, one in English. I'm not entirely sure, but that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing, and this is much more important than the signers, is the message. So what he's saying is look, all you guys that don't vote with me are 100% against me, and that is a big problem. And remember what they're voting on here. They're voting on extending the Emergency Act right? Which, by the way, this is the first time since that act was drafted in the 80s to replace the other act that has been used. They're voting on whether or not to extend it, even after Ottawa, they dispersed of the truckers. There's no more truckers. The streets are open. They're voting on extending these emergency measures to give Justin Trudeau ultimate power. And in fact, on that day, 2 days ago, the government and the parliament voted 185 to 151 to support the usage of the Emergency Act, the continued usage of the Emergency Act. Now, here's the crazy thing. In the same breath that he's invoking the Emergency Act and getting it so that he can use it for a much longer time than it needs to be used, he's at the same time defending other democracies around the world. Take a listen.
Canada and our allies will defend democracy. We are taking these actions today to stand against authoritarianism. The people of Ukraine, like all people, must be free to determine their own future. We will continue working with our international partners to safeguard Ukraine's territorial integrity and prevent further Russian aggression.
So he's, quote, defending other democracies while totally undermining his own country's democracy with the acts that he's imposing. This just goes beyond hypocritical. I mean, it's a combination of narcissism and just insanity that this guy is talking like this right now. In his own country, the police are not only arresting indefinitely truckers, right? They're with no bail. They're going away for maybe up to 10 years for peacefully protesting. He's doing that. He's chasing people down, freezing bank accounts that submitted money to the truckers. He's freezing stores, or he's going into stores that were giving truckers coffee, right? This is a full... The Ottawa police, we showed it on Monday, said, oh yeah, this is going to go months later. Months later, we're going to find you. If you donated $100, we're going to find you and we are going to punish you. Okay, that's what he's doing in his country, but yet he says he's defending Ukrainian democracy. Okay, big guy. Now, I don't know what happened between Tuesday and Wednesday, but something happened. And now let's hear what Justin Trudeau has to say on Wednesday.
Our third principle. We were very clear that the use of the Emergencies Act would be limited in time. When we invoked it, it would be in place for up to 30 days, but we said that we would lift it as soon as possible. We've held updates and briefs with ministers and officials every day, often multiple times a day. And today, after careful consideration, we're ready to confirm that the situation is no longer an emergency. Therefore, the federal government will be ending the use of the Emergencies Act. We are confident that existing laws and bylaws are now sufficient to keep people safe. Of course, we'll continue to be there to support provincial and local authorities if and when needed.
Here he comes, hero of the Republic, Justin Trudeau. What a sleazeball. Wow, so yeah, I have no idea what happened in the last 24 hours, but something big changed. I don't know what his advisors are saying, but they must have said, man, we didn't really get it, but Canada is so mad right now. Turn it around. So Justin's trying to turn it around. I wonder what's going to happen to the Ottawa police chief or all these other people that are doing all these other things with these truckers. But for now, the Emergency Act has actually been turned around, even though Parliament voted to keep it going just 2 days ago. I guess it's done now, for now. And we have to thank the truckers. Canadians all over have to thank the truckers. It is because of them that I think that these restrictions are lightened up, especially the Emergency Act, which I guess could be argued that it is also because of them he put it in there. But that was an extreme move and it shouldn't have happened in the first place. So I think we all owe big thanks to the Canadian truckers. And yeah, I guess the Emergency Act is over, and I hope that, Canadians can go about their day. But now they're weary. And by the way, if you think Justin Trudeau is going to have another term, I think you've got another thing coming. I think this guy is done. I think he's done. He's going to be remembered for the rest of history as a tyrant during these COVID times. And, that's fine with me. It seems in other places, COVID's also coming to an end, at least the COVID restrictions. Let's take a look at England.
First, we will remove all remaining domestic restrictions in law. From this Thursday, 24th of February, we will end the legal requirement to self-isolate following a positive test. And so we will also end self-isolation support payments, although COVID provisions for statutory sick pay can still be claimed for a further month. We will end routine contact tracing and no longer ask fully vaccinated close contacts and those under 18 to test daily for 7 days. And we will remove the legal requirement for close contacts who are not fully vaccinated to self-isolate. Until the 1st of April, we will still advise people who test positive to stay at home, but after that, we will encourage people with COVID-19 symptoms to exercise personal responsibility. Just as we encourage people who may have flu.
All right, so now we're going to start treating COVID like we treat the flu. It's here to stay. If you have it, you don't feel good, stay at home, feel a little better. But no more restrictions, no more COVID tracing, and no more any of it. All right, good job, England. That's really awesome. And we'll see if the rest of the world, especially the West, decides to go down this path or decides to go back to COVID crazy town. I think eventually they're going to go down this path because obviously this is the path of truth, reason, and science. But crazy town is always an interesting time, and they seem to like it over there as well. Speaking of things that are interesting and how science is changing and, what should the recommendations be, let's take a look at the CDC recommending pregnant women get vaccinated.
I encourage my patients to get COVID-19 vaccination. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. Millions of doses have already been given in the United States, and these vaccines have gone through the most intensive safety monitoring in U.S. history. The results are reassuring. Serious side effects are very rare. I tell my patients if they have questions to ask me or use a reliable source like the CDC website to get the facts.
Well, that was a pleasant and nice sounding commercial, but when your patients go to you to ask you for the facts, what all can you tell them, Dr. Castillo? What can you really tell them about this thing, especially in terms of pregnancy? There's been very few studies, and the sample sizes have been, relatively small, and we're still learning a lot about this. So much so that actually in December of 2021, so 2 months ago, the CDC released this letter. Now, it's kind of a long letter, it takes up the whole page, but basically there's been quite a few people that have been having false positives for syphilis after inoculation with the COVID vaccine. So the CDC says historically, false reactive tests have been associated with, different illnesses, and like tuberculosis, rickettsial disease, endocarditis. They also say that false reactive tests for syphilis have been shown following immunization of with vaccinations such as smallpox, and that it can occur during pregnancy. So they just learned that in December 2021, so 2 months ago. Hopefully, first of all, hopefully there's no syphilis, right? And I think that's what they're coming out here saying, the people aren't getting syphilis after getting the vaccine, but they're testing positive for it. That's just another thing we didn't know. There's so many things we don't know and so many things coming out about this vaccine day over day that I find it so irresponsible, might be the wrong word, but I find it so interesting that they're just saying, we're telling you it's safe. It's gone through the most safe regimen of tests we've ever done in the history of ever. And I highly recommend you go to your doctors and talk to them about what you know, what you don't know, what they don't know, to make your own personal decision. But I'm a little skeptical when they say that this has gone through the most rigorous safety tests ever, especially when most drugs, the average development time from conception to market is, 12 to 15 years. And this one was less than a year. Yeah, it's going to be hard being more rigorous in less than a year than you can be in 12 to 15 years. So, there's that. Now, you guys know I hate to do this. You know I hate it. I hate saying I told you so. But in another case of in before the science, where we called it months ago, let's hear Dr. Leanna Wen talking about how COVID and their policies have been impacting kids.
Beyond this study is sobering but not at all surprising. We know that school has benefit for children, and therefore when kids are pulled out of school, and also with the uncertainty of not knowing when they're going to go back, that has detrimental impact, certainly on emotional well-being, on stress, including of the parents and caregivers who now don't know what to do about working at the same time. But also now we see that there are very specific impacts on cognitive development, on motor and other milestones for children. Also, we see that there are huge disparities in the study, that those parents and families that are the most vulnerable, most disadvantaged, are the ones that are hurt the most. And so at this point, we really need policies that aim to keep children in school. Perhaps, for example, not having quarantine if children are exposed, having test to stay or other programs. And we also need to be attentive to these long-term consequences. Can we work to close these rampant and wide educational disparities?
You and I are both.
Oh, so you're saying this does negatively impact kids? Well, that's good. We were saying that months and months ago, and there were many people saying that months ago, and they were just COVID deniers. They were science deniers. They weren't following the science. Do you guys remember people were saying, well, there's no studies. There's no studies, so how could you possibly know that it's bad? There's no studies. Well, you don't need studies for common sense. You don't need to study everything to know particular outcomes are most likely going to happen. You just need to apply common sense. And now that we've discussed common sense, let's quickly apply that to masking kids in school right now. Let's quickly apply our common sense to masking kids in school and say no more masks. Just take them off tomorrow. Tomorrow, all these policymakers just drop mask mandates in school. That would be great. All right, so now we're going to go over this article from JAMA that's gotten a lot of excitement in the press lately, and the title of that article is Efficacy of Ivermectin Treatment on Disease Progression Among Adults with Mild to Moderate COVID-19 and Comorbidities. This publication was made available online February 18th of 2022. So why all the press? Well, it's right here in the conclusion. I'll read it for you guys first. In this randomized clinical trial of high-risk patients with mild to moderate COVID-19, ivermectin treatment during early illness did not prevent progression to severe disease. The study findings do not support the use of ivermectin for patients with COVID-19. Of course, with that conclusion on the first page of this article, everybody was jumping on the bit to say, hey, look, we told you so. Look at that horse paste. Yeah, you guys shouldn't use that stuff. Come on, let's do real science here. Well, not so fast. Let's go through parts of the article. So for starters, this takes place in Malaysia, and the two groups that were in the study are going to be one group that has no treatment, that's the control, and then the other group that's going to be treated with ivermectin. So in the ivermectin group, you're going to have 241 patients, and in the control group, you're going to have 249. So the first thing that stuck out to me is the outcome measures. So I'm going to read it to you right now, and then I'll say what I think about it. So the primary outcome was the proportion of patients who progressed to severe COVID-19 defined as the hypoxic stage requiring supplemental oxygen to maintain SpO2 95% or greater. The SpO2 was measured using a calibrated pulse oximeter per the clinical monitoring protocol. Now the secondary outcomes were time of progression to severe disease, 28-day in hospital all-cause mortality, mechanical ventilation rate, intensive care unit admission, and length of hospital stay after enrollment. So for me personally, you'd think that a primary outcome would be preventing death and ventilation. That would be the number one. And then secondary, okay, let's see how people progress. Let's see if they go from bad to a little bit worse to needing this. But the primary thing for me is preventing death. So that's an interesting outcome measure, I thought. Another red flag for me on this study is the fact that they allowed patients that had symptoms of COVID. They allowed them within 7 days of symptom onset, okay, to start treatment or to be part of the study, I should say. Now, why is that important? Well, typically antivirals, for example, Tamiflu, work best 1 to 2 days of symptom onset, right? So if you try to take Tamiflu 6 days into having the flu, it's probably not going to do a whole lot for you. Whereas if you take it early, it'll do a lot for you. So ivermectin has been shown to do the same thing. It's been shown to be quite powerful the earlier on you take it. And we'll show that here at the end after talking about the study. So the fact that they let patients come in 7 days in, those patients aren't going to do as well as the patients that are getting it within 1 to 2 days of symptom onset. And again, that's due to the mechanism of action of the drug. So now I'm going to discuss two of the results. The first is going to be mechanical ventilation, and now I'm quoting from the study. Mechanical ventilation occurred in 4 patients in the ivermectin group versus 10 patients in the control group. That's 1.7% of the ivermectin group and 4% of the control group. So you'll see at the end of the sentence there, it says p-value is equal to 0.17, okay? And that's for mechanical ventilation. So what that means is typically in scientific papers, they use this arbitrary p-value of 0.05 to determine statistical significance. So they call that number alpha. So if alpha is less than 0.05, you would say that it is statistically significant. And that is to say that there is a less than 5% chance that the whole thing you're looking at happened due to chance, versus the opposite, which is a 95% chance that the intervention you're looking at actually caused some change. So in this case, the p-value of the alpha was 0.17, which is greater than 0.05. And because it's greater than 0.05, it's not statistically significant in this paper. That p-value of 0.17, though, also indicates that there's an 83% chance that the intervention caused the outcome, right? So there's an 83% chance that it actually does make a difference whether you're taking ivermectin early on or not in terms of mechanical ventilation. Now, the mortality rate was even closer to the quote statistical significance of alpha being 0.05. Let's read that sentence. So the 28-day in-hospital mortality rate was similar for the ivermectin and control groups. It was 3 for the ivermectin group and 10 for the control group. That had a p-value of 0.09. So again, that's a 9% chance of that event happening by chance and a 91% chance of that event happening due to the intervention, right? So the intervention actually made a difference in the deaths, 91% chance that was the case. So again, based on these and other metrics in the study, they found that the use of ivermectin for patients with COVID-19 was not supported. So this is in fact the second ivermectin paper published in JAMA showing that the drug doesn't work, and it's a meta-analysis. Well, there's actually this website called ivermectinmeta.com, ivmmeta.com, link in the descriptions, and it's actually a real-time update of all the meta-analyses of ivermectin and COVID. And right now they have 78. They update it daily. You can go check it out, and we can actually see where this study falls amongst the meta-analyses. You can see it there looped in with the late treatment section, and that's fair enough because they, 7 days into, or allowing up to 7 days for treatment's pretty late. But there it is amongst all the other studies, and this has every study so far published. And you can see the vast majority indicate at least some significant, help, some alleviation of symptoms of disease with early treatment of ivermectin. There's, 78 papers here, and they keep coming, and the data is overwhelmingly positive. So I wonder when JAMA is going to acknowledge this. I don't know. I think it's pretty good, and I think it's good to look at all the options. Again, all the links to each paper are here. So if you want to go check out any single paper that's in this meta-analysis, you can just hover right over it and click it. It's that easy. So I highly recommend everyone interested in this topic to go check out ivmmeta.com and just see what you think about ivermectin. Speaking of ivermectin, did the Queen take ivermectin for COVID?
People in the 90s are at significant danger of the bad outcomes of COVID.
Dr. Mukesh Haikerwal says a COVID patient the Queen's age should be isolating and might benefit from new medicines currently approved for high-risk patients at Australian hospitals.
These tablets or these infusions can make a dramatic difference to their immediate welfare and health and how they feel, but also their long-term benefits as well.
Is it possible for a person in their 90s to have a mild case of COVID?
So if it was too quick, I'm going to pause it on the screen that's making everyone think that. And that's on this particular screen. It says Stromectol, 3 milligrams, 4 tablets each containing 3 milligrams of ivermectin. So turns out that the company that aired this apologized, and they didn't mean to insinuate that the Queen was in fact taking ivermectin. This from The Guardian. Nine Network apologizes for the error suggesting Queen may have used ivermectin to treat COVID. And then this is coming from the doctor in the show. Ivermectin never even came into the conversation, he said. I said there are medications available for people who are vulnerable. I didn't even name them, but it was obviously sotrovimab. It certainly would not have been ivermectin. I wouldn't recommend it. A Nine spokesperson said the shot of Stromectol should not have been included and was the result of human error. Okay. We did not intend to suggest Dr. Mukesh Howick Corwall endorsed Stromectol, the spokesperson said. We've apologized to him this morning and he accepted the apology. We do not suggest the Queen is using ivermectin. Ivermectin is approved for treating parasites and lice in humans, but is also used for livestock deworming in the form of paste or drench. So the Queen's not taking ivermectin. Wink, wink. Actually, I have no idea. And, she, according to this guy, she isn't, and cool. But what if she was? What's the big deal? People are so vitriolic about this topic that they won't even admit if it did change, right? What if there was 5 studies that came out tomorrow saying that ivermectin was excellent for COVID? Do you think these people would stop saying horse paste? I'm not convinced. It's crazy, crazy, crazy how political it's gotten. And that'll do it for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Thanks for getting us to 30 subscribers. Let's keep going. Let's make that reasonable debate loud and clear and invite all of our friends, invite all of our coworkers. I look forward to talking to you all again on Friday. Have a great day and please enjoy this video.